Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining to us from around the world. It's a truly an honor to open this incredible global event, and a space where students, researchers, and industry professionals for every continent come together to explore the future of quantum computing. Over these few days, we reconnect minds and cross borders, share knowledge, and build bridges that will empower the next generation of quantum innovators. This festival is much more than a conference. It's a movement that empowers the Latin American quantum community to connect it with the international partners and to showcases the creativity, talent, and potential that our region brings to the global quantum ecosystems. We want to express our deepest gratitude to our sponsors as partners. Your vision and support have made this worldwide initiative possible. Thank you to you. We are bringing continents, expanding access to quantum education, and inspiring future leaders in this transformative field. Let's make this an unforgettable journey of collaboration, discovery, and community. Welcome to the Global Station Quantum. Welcome to Cubic Hub and ABN Kiskifal Fest 2025, proudly hosted for and with the Latin American community. And now, to officially begin our program, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker. The Professor Laia Domingo is a Chief Science Officer at Ingenii and a researcher in quantum machine learning with a PS degree from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. She develops practical quantum solutions for life science, focusing on application in drug discovery and biomedical research. Her work spans quantum reservoir computing, hybrid neural network, and machine learning for quantum systems. With over 50 publications in the field, she also teaches postgraduate courses at the University Polytechnic of Catalonia, aiming to make quantum technologies accessible and impactful. Please join Please join me in welcome to Professor Laia Domingo. We have talked quantum machine learning and knowledge for life science.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Braulio, for your introduction. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. Great. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, we can see.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here and get to know you all. So, yes, I'm Laia. I'm from Barcelona, and I'm the Chief Science Officer of Ingenii. We're a small quantum startup designed to bring solutions of quantum computing and quantum machine learning within life sciences. And today I wanted to just talk a little bit about the quantum landscape, introduce quantum machine learning. Um, and also talk about some of the research projects that we've been developing and where we see quantum machine learning evolving within life sciences in the short term. So yeah, let's get started. So okay, so we are at Ingenii, we're building quantum machine learning tools and solutions to solve problems within life sciences. So I thought the first thing that we could start talking about was why we need quantum computing within AI and machine learning, right? Because right now AI it's in its top basically, so everyone is using AI. It's in its peak of adoption. So you might think, okay, why do we need something else besides AI? So let's talk about some of the challenges with the use that we're giving AI nowadays. So I think the first and more important challenge is the immense computational power that's required to train and deploy some of the large AI models. For example, all of the large language models that we're using basically every day, they take an immense computational power to just train and deploy. And actually, like if you see this graph, you can see that if if this trend continues, some estimates suggest that by 2027, the computational cost could surpass the total GDP of the United States. So this is really showcasing how the more that we use and need AI, the more computational power we need. And even though there are a lot of efforts trying to improve those models so that they don't need so much computational power, it is true that we want to use AI more and more. So even if these models get more efficient, the demand also increases. And this is why there's this need for making those models computationally more efficient. And then you can think, okay, maybe we can just build more powerful classical computers, right? Like we could build more powerful supercomputers that could decrease the computational power needed to train those AI models. But then we find out that there's a physical limitation for improving the classical performance of computers. And this process, which is known by the Moore's law, tells us that during the years we've been packing more and more transistors into the same amount of space. So we've been making transistors smaller so that we can fit more of these transistors into a classical computer of a certain size, and therefore we've been gaining more and more computational power. But there's actually physical limit to the amount of transistors that we can put in a certain space, because now transistors are almost as small as atoms, and we cannot make them smaller because this is a physical limitation. So because of these two problems, we need a lot of computational power, and at the same time, we cannot achieve this computational power with classical computers. And this is why in the past few years, there's been this trend of thinking about new ways of computation that could give us this computational power that classical computers just cannot give us. And quantum computing is just one of these avenues. Of course, quantum computing has been here much longer than the huge advances in AI and large language models, but it is one of the computing paradigms that could shift how we solve certain problems. Okay, and then I want to continue with a disclaimer, which is that classical and quantum computers represent different ways of processing information. So they are designed to solve different problems, so that quantum computing is not just an advanced way of supercomputing that would accelerate any kind of computational task, but it's a new way of thinking about problems. It's a new way of designing algorithms, which can drastically accelerate the computation of certain mathematical problems, but not all problems. And to explain this, I like to talk about this metaphor. So imagine that you are exploring a new island and you want to get to know the whole island. There are several ways in which you could explore this island. The first one is just walking. You can walk around the island, and this is equivalent to solving a problem by hand. So you can do it, it's feasible, but it's not going to be very efficient. Then another alternative is to rent a car and explore the island using your car. That would be equivalent to solving a problem with a classical computer or supercomputer. And then another option will be to rent a boat and explore the vast ocean surrounding the whole island. So as you can see, both the classical and quantum computers are designed to solve different problems. You're not going to explore the land of the island using your boat, and you're not going to explore the ocean using your car. So they're complementary ways of solving problems, and quantum computer could solve problems that are very hard or even impossible to solve with classical computers in a relevant time. But at the same time, quantum computers can be very bad for solving some classical problems. So we usually start thinking about which problems are hard to solve with classical computers, where are those bottlenecks, and then we think, is this a problem that quantum computing could solve better? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we can't expect to have an advantage with every single type of problem, because there are just different ways of formulating solutions and tackling use cases. And then another disclaimer. So when we think about quantum, I think that right now the opinion is quite binary. Some people think that quantum computing is going to break cryptography tomorrow. Some people think that it's 20 years away. But the truth is that quantum is nothing but binary. But there's a roadmap to quantum development and to quantum adoption. So when we think that quantum computing is 20 years away, we're usually thinking about fault-tolerant quantum computers and fault-tolerant quantum algorithms. So these are those algorithms that require large-scale quantum computers with very low like errors, like noise levels. So for us to achieve these kind of quantum computers, it is true that these quantum computers do not exist, and no one really knows when they're going to be available. Some hardware providers say that in the next 5 years, we're going to have the first fault-tolerant quantum computers, and then we will see how this will scale to larger computers with low noise and more like logical qubits. So that's that kind of quantum computers. But apart from fault-tolerant quantum computers, there are also other approaches which use quantum information and even quantum computers. So, for example, hybrid algorithms are those algorithms which bring together the strengths of both classical and quantum hardware. So they try to solve the problem by breaking the problem down into different subproblems and solving part of the problem with a quantum computer and part of the problem with a classical computer. And this is something that we can already do today, and that we can already gain some sort of advantage compared to traditional approaches. I see that some people are are highlighting parts of this. It's not me, but okay, it's okay. So okay, this is hybrid algorithms, and then there's another type of computing which is quantum inspired computing. So quantum-inspired algorithms are designed to run efficiently on classical computers, so on GPUs, but they draw inspiration from the principles of quantum mechanics and quantum information. So these models are very interesting because you can already run them today in classical hardware efficiently, but they're also designed to run on quantum hardware so that you can run them today on classical hardware and still get some advantage because of the formulation of the problem, because that's an efficient formulation of the problem. And as your problem scales, you can run them in a quantum computer and get even more advantage in the future. So not actually having a quantum computer is not always a limitation for gaining some advantage from quantum information. Okay, so these are the different types of algorithms and solutions that you can build. And we're usually in the space of hybrid algorithms or quantum-inspired algorithms, because at Ingenii we're focused on like the short-term advantages of quantum solutions. Okay, so this was like the first part of Ingenii, right? I said quantum machine learning, and then I said for life sciences. So what are the most relevant applications in life sciences? Well, it turns out that actually life sciences as a whole, including pharmaceuticals and healthcare, is one of the areas where quantum computing is expected to have the higher impact. So here you can see like a graph that was made by McKinsey where they predicted which areas, which fields would benefit more from quantum computing and in the shorter term. And it turns out that these areas are some of the areas which are expected to gain like more advantages from quantum computing. So just to give you like a general idea of what kind of problems you could solve with quantum computing within life sciences, some of the areas are within healthcare and pharmaceuticals. So for example, diagnostic assistance evaluating the risk of a particular person of having a certain disease and moving more towards precision medicine. That's an area that quantum computing could help. Or for example, in drug discovery, the discovery of small molecules, quantum computing could help generating different candidates and understanding which ones are more promising, and like exploring the vast space of potential molecules that you could create. And then in the next step, once you have created a molecule, you would also perform some target validation, like understanding how this molecule, how this drug is going to behave in a person's body, right? So how it's going to interact with the proteins of your body and whether it's going to perform its function or not. So that kind of task could be done with artificial intelligence, but usually it requires having very large machine learning models. So with quantum computing, you could actually reduce the size of training parameters and maybe like prevent overfitting the training data and get like more accurate predictions. And then the final step of drug discovery would be clinical trial, right? Once you've identified the drug and you believe that it's going to be useful, you go through a series of clinical trials to validate it. So in the clinical trial space, there's a lot that can also be done in just optimizing the design of the clinical trial, how you select patients, how you allocate patients in different groups, even like site selection, or how do you like even evaluate the performance of the clinical trial. So there are a lot of areas here that could be accelerated using quantum computing. And in this presentation, I'm going to show you 3 examples of this. And then another area that's very relevant for quantum, also a little bit related, is energy and materials. So for example, quantum computing could help in optimizing the production process, For example, fine-tuning the parameters of your production process to reduce like byproducts, for example, or optimize energy or the resources that you need in this process. Also for other types of optimization, like supply chain optimization or optimizing inventory or logistics, things like that. And then more in the molecular level, understanding molecular design and protein folding for new materials. That's something that could also help with like quantum simulation and quantum machine learning algorithms. So this is a bit like the general landscape of things that we could do with using quantum computing and quantum machine learning within life sciences. And after this introduction, I wanted to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, what we offer, and then I'm going to introduce a few like research projects that we've been developing. So we're Ingenii. We're a small quantum computing startup, and our mission is to empower data scientists who don't know quantum with quantum computing skills so that they can apply those in their areas of expertise. So we believe that quantum scientists shouldn't be solving all of the problems that could benefit from quantum technologies, but it would actually be better to give those skills to the people who solve these problems, who are the expert matters in the different problems. So this is why we're developing a set of tools to empower data scientists with the quantum skills to apply those in their areas of expertise. So for example, we offer training courses, we have self-paced courses, training programs, immersion programs, so that these courses can adapt to different kinds of profiles. And then we also have development tools. For example, we have our Ingenii Quantum Python library, which like sits on top of some of the traditional programming languages like Qiskit or Penny to try to like abstract the complexity of some of these algorithms and provide like useful tools for users. And then we also have tools to like validate where quantum computing creates real value. And I'm going to show you a little bit the new platform that we're launching that will help you like understand the value of a potential use case. And then apart from these tools, we also do research and we do partnerships and collaborations with companies and research institutions to understand which solutions could best benefit from quantum computing and quantum machine learning. So for example, I'm going to present three different use cases in drug discovery, medical imaging analysis, and clinical trial optimization doing active research on. So I think I already talked a little bit about this, but going into the courses that we have self-paced quantum machine learning courses. We have one that's an introduction to quantum machine learning, and then another one that's more tailored towards image analysis with quantum methods. And the idea is that these are very like hands-on. So yes, they contain QML modules like theory, but it's very much based on doing a hands-on exercises and getting like real experience in applying those quantum machine learning algorithms. We also have like tailored training programs for different like companies or universities if we need like a program that's tailored to someone in particular. And then we have our experiential quantum immersion program, which is a 12-week immersive quantum machine learning program that's designed to help you like get those practical quantum skills and hopefully accelerate your career. So this course contains a set of modules. It's more complete than our self-paced QML courses, of course with hands-on exercises and also like hands-on projects. And then it contains a series of networking opportunities and hackathons to really like see all the phases of quantum development. So not only helps you acquire like hard skills, but also like connect with the community and understand how the ecosystem is evolving. So this is about like the learn aspect of Ingenii. Then we have the build. So as I said, we have a quantum computing open source library that's called the Ingenii Quantum. And it basically offers different like visualization tools to like dissect quantum algorithms, understand how they work. And this library sits on top of Penny and Qiskit. So you can visualize some algorithms. It also has like algorithm building blocks so that you can understand better how certain algorithms work and how to like abstract some of the complexity of certain algorithms, and then like evaluation and optimization metrics to understand like the complexity of your algorithm, and then relate those to different papers that have studied how different designs, like algorithmic designs, influence the performance in different types of data, so that we can provide all of this information to the user and they don't have to like do so much research on the topic. And then apart from that, we also offer like enablement services for companies. So if you're a company and you want to discover if your project is worth solving with quantum computing, we can also help you like develop a POC and a quantum roadmap in different areas of life sciences. And finally, I'm very excited to show you our Ingenii exchange, which we're beta launching like right now. So this is a platform that helps you validate the usefulness of quantum technologies for a particular use case. So when we like in this journey of exploring quantum computing for life sciences, we've seen that one of the challenges with quantum computing is not only like finding the solution to a problem, but also finding which problems are relevant for quantum computing, right? Because as I said at the beginning, quantum and classical computers are different ways of solving a problem. So it's not always the case that you can get an advantage with quantum computing, but you actually have to find the right problems that can benefit from quantum technologies. And it's actually pretty like problem dependent. Like you have to go a little bit deep into how you're like formulating your problem and what you're trying to get from your solution and what your classical bottlenecks are. So actually, we thought maybe we can create a tool that can help scientists just understand whether the idea is worth pursuing with quantum computing or not. So instead of like spending a lot of time and money into doing a validation of the use case, maybe they can have a platform that can help them get a fast answer. And also another aspect of quantum computing is community, right? So we really want to build community. And as a researcher myself, I often might find myself in the situation where I want to solve this cool problem, but maybe I don't have all the expertise that's needed. Maybe I need an expert in medical imaging or clinical trials or quantum cryptography, right? So connecting with the community is a very relevant aspect of your quantum journey. So we also wanted to provide a space where you could connect with people and also like propose projects and find people with relevant expertise to match your project and like together advance research and development of quantum technologies. So just very fast, let me show you what this Ingenii exchange platform looks like. So basically, we have use cases. So we have different use cases for like created by different users, and you could like save them, and you could have them be private, so just to yourself, and you can also have them be public for the rest of the community to see them. Sorry, my computer is a bit slow today. Help me, let me reload this. So yeah, as I was saying, you can create your own use case, and then you can share it with the community. Mm. Sorry, I think my computer is extremely slow today. But basically, the idea is that you can create your own use case, and then you can get some impact and technical assessments out of it, so that you can assess you can understand in which areas your use case can provide an impact. So, for example, whether if it's a financial impact or if it's an operational impact, because you're going to need fewer people to work on this on this on this problem with you. So you can get a report understanding in which areas can your solution provide an impact. So here, for example, this is a use case regarding patient stratification, and you can see that you can have high impact in the competitive advantage compared to competitors, and also financial impact. There's a report that you can download to share with your team. You can also like leave comments in your community. And apart from the impact, you can also find your technical assessment. So here, once you validate that your problem is worth solving, basically, that you could get some relevant impact, then you can go through a series of assessments to assess the technical feasibility of quantum solutions for this problem. And in this case, you can see that hybrid annealing and quantum annealing can actually provide some advantage to solving your problem. And then you would get like a personalized like report with the next steps, what kind of hardware you can use, what are the relevant papers for this kind of solutions, so that you know like at least how to get started. And then another thing is the projects. So as I said, you might want to start a project, but you're needing some expertise and you're needing a collaborator. So here you could create your own project and like share it with the community, and you can say, hey, I'm needing expertise in these topics, so that other people working on these topics can know what you need and maybe want to apply to your project. Or if you're a researcher and are looking for collaborations, you can see what are the open projects and look for collaborators to develop those projects. And finally, we also have like a community where you can meet with other people. You can see other people's profiles. You can message them. Yeah, we have a messaging tool, and you can also see what public use cases they're linked to if you want to explore what kind of research they do. So this is our tool. It's in its beta launch, so we're just launching this, and we want to receive feedback. We want basically to create a tool that's useful for the community. So any information that we can get from people using it would be very useful. So actually, we have a 30-day free coupon for you guys for the Qiskit Fall Fest. I'm going to share it afterwards. But please feel free, if you think this is interesting, please feel free to join and explore and yeah, and bring your ideas to reality, basically. Okay, so this is a little bit about who we are and what we do. And then in the last part of the presentation, I just wanted to introduce a few projects that we've developed using quantum computing and quantum machine learning within life sciences. And the first one is in the area of drug discovery. So in this project, our goal was to accelerate one of the areas of drug discovery, which is target validation. So after you have like discovered a new compound that you want to use as a drug, and before going to clinical trials, one of the experiments and information that you will want to get from this molecule is how it's going to interact with the proteins of your body. So in this use case, we wanted to calculate something that's called the binding affinity, which calculates the interaction strength between a molecule, like the new drug, and the protein of your body. So calculating this is actually pretty challenging because there are a lot of factors that influence how this binding affinity is going to be. And the way that it had been done traditionally was using classical like neural networks. But some of the problems that they had with that is that the neural networks were very high dimensional, so they had a lot of training parameters. So they took a long time to train, and they also needed very vast data sets to train those neural networks, because otherwise they would like fail to generalize to new molecules, to new drugs. So here we had the challenge of first of all, accelerating the training of these neural networks so that they were not that costly, and then trying to improve the accuracy and the performance of the prediction of these neural networks. And just to give you, just to spoil you a little bit, with two different methods that combined like hybrid hybrid neural networks and a quantum fusion model, we were able to provide a 20% reduction of training parameters, which was translated into a 20 to 40% savings in times and GPU costs. And we were also able to improve the performance of the model by 6%. So let me tell you a little bit how we did this. So the first part of the project was about reducing like time costs of the training of this neural network. So what were the classical bottlenecks in this case? The first bottleneck was that our data was very high dimensional. So for every data sample, our data sample had a size that was 19 times 48, 48, 48, which means that every single data point contained more than 2 million numbers. So to give you an idea, these data points were like three-dimensional boxes that contained the position of all the atoms in this three-dimensional space. So just to represent the position of the atoms in the molecules in space, we need more than 2 million numbers for every single like molecule protein pair, right? So in order to build a neural network that was able to learn from this data, we needed very large neural networks. In this case, we were using a convolutional neural network, which required training more than 10 million parameters to capture all the complexity of the data. So this meant that it took a very long time, like 15 to 18 days, just to train one single model. And in reality, you want to train a lot of models to like understand and like improve the architecture design of those models. And this was also translated to like higher GPU costs needed to train these models. And finally, because these models had so many training parameters, they were usually also overfitting your training data. So they were learning what the training data was, but was failing to generalize to like new molecules, new drugs, new proteins, right? So in this scenario, what we did was to build a hybrid neural network to reduce the complexity of the classical neural network. In this case, we had a convolutional neural network, and the first layer of the convolutional neural network was the one that had the most training parameters because it was the layer that was dealing with the original data. And then afterwards, we were like reducing the dimensionality of the data and like containing like fewer parameters. So the first layer was the one that was like more critical. So in this case, what we did was replace this classical convolutional layer by a quantum convolutional layer, which had fewer training parameters. In this case, it was a quantum reservoir, which is a kind of layer that is like chosen, like the design is chosen at the beginning and it has very, very few training parameters just at the end of the layer. So it actually allowed us to reduce the number of training parameters from 10 million to 8 million. And instead of having to wait 18 days to train this model, we could train it with only 10 days. So it was really a massive improvement in time and complexity of the model. And just to give you a bit of the scientific part of how we build this model, well, first of all, we had to encode the data into a quantum circuit. In that case, we used a data encoding method that was originally designed to deal with images, but in this case, since we had like a three-dimensional space, which was basically like an image, we could also like treat it as an image. So the first step was to encode the data into this quantum circuit. We used flexible representation of quantum images, which basically uses like one pixel, like one qubit to represent the value of one pixel, and then the rest of the Hilbert space, so the quantum space, to represent the position of this pixel. And then after encoding the data and the data into the quantum circuit, we applied the quantum transformation, which extracted like relevant information from the data. And finally, we applied the measurements. We use this kind of circuit that's called the quantum reservoir. And with that, basically, we saw that with only 300 gates, we were able to achieve the same like level of accuracy that we obtained with the classical neural network, while like reducing the number of parameters by 20%. And finally, like this purple line here just demonstrate what would happen if you just reduce the number of training parameters in the classical model without using the quantum model. And we see that actually the quantum model provided relevant information for the neural network to train like efficiently. So this was the first part, and then the second part was to try to improve the accuracy. So with this first model, we achieved the same level of accuracy with shorter time, and then we wanted to improve the accuracy of the model. And in order to do that, we designed a model that combined the outputs of two different classical models. So we had our two different types of classical models, the convolutional neural network, which was then like improved using this hybrid method. This neural network looked at the data in a spatial way, so that it looked at the position of the atoms in space. And then we had another type of neural network, which is called the graph neural network, which looked at the bonds in the molecule. So instead of looking at the atoms in space, it looked at the like connections between those atoms. So we thought these two neural networks actually look at the data in different ways. So maybe we can combine the outputs of these two neural networks to achieve better performance than the two neural networks would do separately. So in order to do that, we built a quantum neural network, which acted as a quantum fusion model. So we took the features extracted from the two models and we gave them to a quantum neural network to make the final predictions. And we compared a quantum neural network with a classical one. And basically what we saw is that with the right design of the quantum neural network, the quantum fusion model provided a 6% improvement in the accuracy of the model. And this was because it was not overfitting the training data so much. So the loss function was more like decreased smoothly during training instead of like varying a lot. So the quantum model was actually more robust to generalize to new data. Okay, so this is everything about drug discovery. And then another project that we've done is regarding medical imaging analysis. So in this project, we wanted to study mammography images to detect breast cancer prematurely, basically. So the task that we wanted to do was called medical imaging segmentation, which is the process of identifying the areas of interest in an image. So in this case, we wanted to identify the areas that contained a tumor. Um, so this is the typical task that you could do with a classical neural network. You can train a classical neural network to identify the regions of interest. The only problem is that you need a lot of labeled data. So you need data that's annotated. And this is not always the case, especially in like rare diseases. There's not always like reliable data that you can use. So in this case, we wanted to think about a way of doing the same thing, but in an unsupervised manner. And this is why we came up with this formulation of the problem, which instead of solving this problem with a classical neural network, we formulated the problem as solving a QO problem, so a quadratic unconstrained binary optimization problem that learned to differentiate the like background of the image from the region of interest. So the way that we did it was by formulating this QO problem by inputting like measuring like the similarity of neighboring pixels and also having like a smoothness constraint. So instead of giving this image into a neural network, now we formulated the problem as a quadratic binary optimization problem that we can solve using optimization algorithms. So then what we did is test different quantum optimization algorithms, so and classical as well. So we tested Gurobi, which is a classical solver, and then, for example, simulated annealing, which is also a classical solver that has its quantum version, which is quantum annealing. And what we saw is that, for example, quantum annealing matched the performance of classical optimizations, but it was much, much faster. And it actually had a similar performance to a classical neural network with supervised data. So we achieved a similar performance without labeled data compared to what we would have with labeled data. So this really opens the door to not needing expertly annotated data sets for this type of tasks. So this is what we did with medical imaging. And finally, within clinical trials, there are a lot of areas that could be optimized. And this is very relevant because clinical trials have very, very large costs and failure rates. So you can see that the costs of conducting clinical trials is in the millions of dollars. So they're very costly. And there's actually like a 70% failure rate in clinical trials. So this means that we are spending a lot of money on this. And at the same time, these drugs are not arriving to the patients as fast as they could because most of these trials are failing. So these drugs are not getting to the patients in time. So whatever we can do to try to reduce these failure rates is going to have a massive impact in the clinical trial space. So there are a lot of use cases that we could solve in this clinical trial optimization problem. And one of the ones that we've been developing is called patient stratification. So this means that when you're conducting a clinical trial, you will want to separate your patients into, for example, the treatment and the control group. When you do this separation, you will want these groups to be as similar as possible regarding a set of covariates. So for example, you will want the groups to be balanced in terms of the age of the patients, the gender, the blood type, maybe some relevant biomarkers related to the disease, and so on. Because if the groups are not similar enough, when you do the clinical trial, you will not be able to obtain statistically significant results because maybe your drug worked for an age range, but it didn't work for another one. So if your treatment and control groups are not as similar as possible, then you will not be able to draw relevant conclusions from your clinical trial. And the way that it's done today is by randomization. So this means assigning randomly patients into these treatment and control groups. But it turns out that doing this randomization actually produces some biases in the distributions of these groups. So in this use case, we thought maybe we can formulate this problem as an optimization problem instead of a statistical problem. So in this case, we did this kind of formulation that basically forces the distributions of the two groups to be as similar as possible regarding the average of the distribution, the variances, and the covariances of the distributions. So that by solving these optimization problems, we find groups that are balanced by design because you're forcing these groups to be balanced. And then the only problem with that is that this is a combinatorial optimization problem. So if you try to solve it with classical solvers, you're going to see that it's a problem that scales very poorly with the number of patients. So here with just like 312 patients, we already saw that the classical optimization algorithms took a long time to arrive to an accurate solution. And we compare these classical optimization methods with hybrid and quantum methods. And what we saw in general is that the quantum or hybrid methods scaled much better than the classical methods. So that actually it makes sense, especially when you have hundreds of patients, to use quantum computing for this kind of problem. And then the last thing that we wanted to see in this use case was, okay, you can solve this problem faster, but what is the actual impact in the clinical trial outcome? So the first thing that we saw, we did, was compare the distributions of two different ways of separating the patients. One was using this randomization, so this random statistical method, and the other one was using this optimization. We saw that with the optimization, the difference in the two groups was much smaller, and that if you do randomization, you actually achieve much higher values in this discrepancy between the two groups. And then we also studied how this was related to the treatment outcome. So, okay, does this influence the outcome of my trial? Yes or no? This is a very hard question to answer because we would have we cannot go back in time and redo a clinical trial in a different way. We cannot know what would have happened if you had put a patient from one group, if you had moved it to another group. right? You cannot do that. But what you can do is remove from the clinical trial those patients that produce a lot of imbalance in the two groups. So those patients that really make the two groups very different, you can remove them and then reanalyze the outcome of the trial. So this is exactly what we did here. And what we saw is that by making the groups more similar to each other, we actually achieved like a p-value, so an outcome of the clinical trial that was better than the initial, like than the actual clinical trial outcome. So that making the groups as similar as possible really makes a difference. Really makes the results of our trial more statistically significant. So what I'm saying with this is that this problem matters. That even if it seems trivial how you separate patients into the different groups, it can really make the difference when you're analyzing the results of a clinical trial. Because otherwise, maybe your drug works perfectly fine, but because of the group that you made, you don't have enough statistical significance to draw relevant conclusions that end up approving your drug to go to market. So this is one example of how quantum optimization can really change the way we think about a problem and provide very relevant results. So I think that's all I wanted to share with you today. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm around. Again, please feel free to try our Ingenii exchange and find people to collaborate with. And also feel free to contact me if you have any questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your amazing presentation, Laia. Not long ago, I was doing molecular dynamics in the EFT, and it's always amazing that people are changing that and going steps ahead, making clinical trials. So thank you so much for that. If you
Thank you. Thank
agree,
you, Juan.
we would like to start with a couple of questions. Some of the attendees are asking, we have the first one by Rirahara Jutwari. Good evening. Thank you for the lecture by Professor Leia. And she's asking that if there's a quantum reservoir, I think. And number two, if CNN and quantum model is integrating.
So I can't hear you very well. So did you ask me you asked me about the quantum reservoir, but what exactly is the question? Like how do I build it?
I'm unsure actually because it just it just writes number one quantum reservoir and number two integrating CNN and quantum model.
Okay, so yes, we did use a quantum reservoir to replace one of the layers, like the first layer of the convolutional layer of the convolutional neural network. So the first convolutional layer was replaced by a quantum reservoir. A quantum reservoir is basically a quantum circuit with fixed parameters. So instead of having variational parameters, which is what you usually have in a quantum neural network, for example, you choose the design of your quantum reservoir beforehand. It sometimes is like the evolution under a certain Hamiltonian or a circuit that generated with a certain type of gates. And the idea is that if you generate a lot of these different quantum reservoirs, they are able to extract relevant information from your input data, which in this case was the molecular data. So we use that layer because it didn't have like training parameters within the quantum circuit. So it was much cheaper to incorporate here. And we saw that with different layers of quantum reservoirs, we could achieve the same performance as a classical convolutional layer that actually had 2 million of training parameters. So that's what we did. And yeah, like the way to integrate it in with a convolutional layer was to make it be the first layer of the convolutional layer, and then we pass the output of the quantum reservoir to the next layers of the convolutional neural network. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
Thank you.
Leia, we had another questions.
Mhm.
One of them is, can you later focus on quantum image representation of volumetric medical image?
If I can focus on quantum image representation.
Yeah. Can you later focus on quantum image representation on volumetric medical image?
Yeah, I mean, there are many data encoding methods that can be expanded to three-dimensional image, so to volumetric images. So, for example, the one that we used here, this one was for molecular image, for molecular data, so it wasn't an image, but it was designed to deal with three-dimensional data. So you can definitely incorporate a lot of these methods into a three-dimensional volumetric image. Yeah, that's for sure.
We had another question about from Aman Churisa. Does reducing imbalance improve treatment effect detections?
What imbalance? Data imbalance?
Does the reducing the imbalance improve the
Mm.
treatment effect detections?
Yes, definitely. Because data imbalance can increase the chances of overfitting your training data. So your model might learn that that just by predicting one type of outcome already gets high performance, even if it's not really distinguishing what is right and what is wrong. So yeah, it's definitely one of the areas that we're willing to achieve with quantum methods.
And another question for Rafruf. Can you tell me about proper roadmap for quantum computing and prerequisites?
Yes, but I don't know if I can do that in 5 minutes. So, quantum math. I actually was going to say that we have a lot of courses on that. And I'd be happy to show them to you. So we have we have several self-paced quantum machine learning courses that introduce all of the mathematics and the algebra of quantum computing without being too overwhelming. So starting from scratch and trying to focus on the application. And then our experiential quantum immersion program, which we're running right now, and we're going to have another cohort in the spring. It's really focused on giving you all of the tools to learn quantum computing and quantum machine learning. So we do start from the mathematical aspects of it, even though we assume you just know basic math, but we go into the algebra, into the quantum theory to give you like the foundations of the algorithms, and then we move into the different quantum machine learning algorithms and how to implement those and how to do like your own hands-on projects. So yeah, I mean, feel free to ask me any like specific questions, but if it's in general about the math, we have a lot of resources that could help you with that.
Thank you, Laria. This was incredibly inspiring. Here in Mexico, we had a growing interest in connecting quantum computing with real-world challenges, especially in healthcare, where the hospital and research centers are beginning to collect large-scale medical data. So, in that regard, for your experience in Engenii, how do you think communities like us, researchers and students in Latin America, could start collaborating or contribute to this kind of work? And here we already have access to this big data in medicine. What would be the best way to begin exploring quantum machine learning application with it?
It's a very, very good question. And I actually think it's through collaboration. So of course you need to learn some hard skills. But I think you're already very invested into that. But then I think it's about understanding the industries, understanding the problems and connecting with the right people, because sometimes it's about how we communicate with each other. So sometimes the challenge might be a physicist talking to a biologist, right? So understanding how each of us think and what are our strengths and how we can bring some value to the table. I think this is really crucial to advancing the development of quantum technologies. And actually, this is also why we created the Ingenii exchange, because not only can you get like a general idea of what problems can receive some impact from quantum computing, but it's also a great way to collaborate with the community. And maybe you have a lot of knowledge in quantum computing and quantum machine learning, but you're needing knowledge from the problem that you want to solve, or it's the other way around. Maybe um, you're an engineer and you know a lot about your specific area of research and you don't know whether quantum is good for you. So you can also connect with people in the space. So we really think it's through these kind of programs, these hackathons, these experiences that we can build a community that's going to revolutionize these areas of knowledge.
Thank you so much. And Atensa, we have time for another questions. This is for Simon Hossain. Can the DNA basic quantum processor accelerate a spark ML algorithms?
Sorry, how does the can
Yeah,
you repeat the
can
question?
the DNA based in quantum processors accelerate or sparse of the machine learning algorithms?
I'm not sure
Such
I understand.
XSL. Yeah.
Maybe can you talk and
Yeah.
we can discuss about this? Can you give me more details about like if quantum processors can accelerate quantum machine learning algorithms? The answer
Yes,
is
exactly.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
The answer is yes in theory. It depends on the quantum hardware. So of course quantum computers are not perfect. So sometimes it is better to simulate those with a classical computer, but at some point it's not going to be scalable. That's exactly the power of quantum
Okay.
computers. So I will say in the future, yes, for sure. In the meantime, like right now, you should really look at your problem and see if you need a quantum computer, or maybe you need a hybrid approach, or maybe you need a quantum inspired approach. Um, but yeah, like for the clinical trial optimization, we definitely use quantum computers for the medical imaging as well. So yes, like they definitely can provide some value in this space.
Okay. It looks like are the all the question in the chat. Please, if someone has another question for the speaker, Laia, can raise the hand and make directly to her. We still have a couple of minutes for more questions. Okay, we have another question for the public. Hassan Saman, thank you so much for your amazing lecture. I truly enjoyed it. Has a physical major and very interesting quantum machine learning applied to engineer and physical science, especially in areas like quantum mechanics and, and computational physics. Could you please be guide me in that direction rather than life science or drug discovery?
I think that the methods that we use can be used in many different areas. So it's not just like the methods that I described were applied to drug discovery because that's the kind of problem that we want to solve. But you can use a quantum neural network or quantum reservoir or quantum annealing processor to solve many problems in many different areas. So I think I would start by understanding quantum machine learning algorithms from the computational point of view, what kind of advantages you can get from those, and then start thinking about how to formulate your specific problem into a format that works for quantum computers and quantum machine learning. But it's not that there are some kind of quantum machine learning algorithms for drug discovery and some others for physical sciences. And they all work for everything. It's just about understanding the methods and then fine tuning it to your kind of data and the kind of stuff that you want to solve.
Thank you so much. Okay, Leia, we are not just part of the team, part of the Cubicle team that you joined today for giving this amazing lecture. So we bring all the information for the participants, especially for the hackathon. Um, Ingenii is a sponsor for this event. We are really appreciate for that. Leia, thank you for joining for today. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.